Welcome to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. Here we analyze politics, culture, technology, personal growth and development, and society at large through the lens of critical thinking and open-mindedness, not demagoguery and partisan hyperbole. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, humanities professor, your host and guide. So without further delay, let's get started. All right, welcome everybody. So glad you're here today, and I have an incredibly special guest with me. His name is Ricardo Vargas, and he is living in Colombia right now. And with the things that are going on, and so many of us are so acutely aware right now of the things that are happening in Cuba, especially down here in Florida with our huge Cuban American population. It's a good thing here to bring in Ricardo, who lives down in South America, and he can kind of give us a flavor, because Colombia's been going through a whole lot of the same type of things that we saw, Cuba years ago, then Venezuela, and we hear in Bolivia and Chile, and all these places are going through a lot of the similar stuff. So it's so great, Ricardo, to have you with us. And you know, we go way back. We go back probably 15, almost 20 years, way back when I was an undergraduate, and you were, I believe, studying English at Arkansas State University. So this is, we saw each other once, I believe, in Florida one time when you were on vacation. But it's so good to have you back with me here today and talking to you. So, Ricardo, let's just start out real simple. Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what's going on in your life, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, David, for having me. Yeah, great friend. Long time ago we met. Yeah, I'm a lawyer here in Colombia. I have some emphasis in labor law, civil law, commercial law, and I work for advisor for companies. I have my firm. And I have a family here. I live with my wife and 3 kids. And the situation here, David, really, really difficult, because it has taken the same path as other countries you already mentioned, such as Chile, Venezuela, which is in very high, deep trouble.
Right.
But now we have that problems in Colombia.
Yeah. So Ricardo, you know, we started talking about coming on this podcast. I mean, probably more than a few weeks ago. It's almost, I think, close to when Colombia started to go through some serious situations there. But really, what is it that you want to get your message out? Why is it important? And then you can just go right on with that and say, what in the world do you think is causing all this unrest that's happening in Colombia and Latin America? And now in Cuba, my goodness, kind of the godfather of communism in the Western Hemisphere.
Oh, yeah. Starting here in Colombia, the political unrest is caused by hidden guerrilla drug trafficking forces in order to destabilize the institutional framework.
Right.
To the interest for the far left leaning movements and political party to take power in the next year's elections. We have elections next year, and but it is important to bear in mind as well that for the moment the current president won the elections and took office. The leftist candidate said that he would initiate the opposition in the streets through social protests. And those social protests have been not only protests, but violence in the streets, and giving really difficult and hard time to the government and for us, civil people.
I see. So in Colombia, is it similar to the United States, where you have, like in the U.S., we have 2 parties. We have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And yeah, there's a couple other fringe parties like the Green Party. But I mean, are you kind of a 2-party system as you go into these elections? Is it going to be one or the other? Or is there a chance for or are there viable candidates across the entire political spectrum in Colombia?
We have two parties, mainly
Two.
two parties, conservatives and liberals. Liberals would be the Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
and the conservatives are the Republicans, as you have there.
Wow.
But yeah, we have historically that to end up the violence between those parties. 60, 50 years ago, they made an agreement for they have to rotation in the government. One period for 4 years would have the conservatives in head, and the liberals the next period, and so on and so forth. But different parties, mainly the leftists, have appeared, and they have a very huge support from in this case from governments such as Venezuela and other parties or other countries in the world. And but here in Colombia, I would want to add something, David, because we are divided, huge, very big division in the political conception, because we had a peace agreement which was signed in 2016 with the president that we thought at that point was part of the institutional, traditional. We don't want traditional per se. We want to be social and give end to that inequality we have here. Right. But that agreement was signed with the guerrilla, and it contained many things that the population didn't want. In fact, that agreement had to be validated for the people here in Colombia, and it lost a very tight vote, 52% against 48%. And the thing was that people say no to that agreement because that peace agreement was letting the rebels get away with murder, and especially they created a special court that was taking or judging the crimes during the conflict, and that court was really not a court that would give a real justice, Right. So, in fact, what people mainly thought was that the guerrilla people was getting away with their crimes. So we have divided that situation, and the leftists are taking advantage of that, and now they're having a huge possibility to get the presidency next period.
I find it fascinating as you describe that division, because it almost seems there's a problem with Western-style democracies around the globe, that this division is just sinking in so deeply. We have it here in the United States. Obviously, in countries like Venezuela, it's at an extreme. I mean, there you almost say it's too late to even matter anymore. But as we look at these elections as they come up, and so this election coming up, that's a presidential election, I'm assuming, right? Not just a Congress one. This is like for the presidency.
Yeah, it is the presidency in May next year.
Yeah, it's just we see this division where a hard left and a hard right are pushing the two extremes in countries with these two-party only systems. And it just seems to be causing more and more violence and more unrest, as if these extremes, it's almost as if a goal is not to win an election, but to rip the country to shreds. That's what it feels like. In so many, it is, for many would say in the US, they feel that same way, that this division is literally shredding the country. And it seems you're going through that same thing then there in Venice or in Colombia.
Yeah, David, and as you mentioned that people would ask if we will become the next Cuba or Venezuela, and what I would say is that we are facing an imminent risk of becoming the next Cuba or Venezuela due to the passivity to the well-developed and engineered strategy thought out by an international group called the Sao Paulo Pact. Have you heard about it?
No. Explain that just a little bit.
Well, it consists in the union or association of left-wing political groups with the idea of taking power in different countries, as it happened recently in Peru. As you saw, in Peru, won the Marxist candidate.
Right.
He's taking the presidency in a few days. But anyhow, here in Colombia, putting our eyes here in Colombia, we had the pandemic that has caused great impact, recession in Colombia for the last situation. The inequality of wealth is very, very high. We have 37.5% of Colombians live below the poverty line by the end of last year.
Really high.
Yeah, it has increased significantly with the country. I mean, it has industrial people, but the poverty is very high. And it is reasonable that people is protesting because they want for the government, not only to get money from the government, but have the possibility to have jobs, places, work, and so on. But that's the situation. We have 51 million people we have in our country, and 19 million are living with less than $91 per month.
Wow,
that's really rough.
And I think somehow, some way, for democracy, for capitalism to survive, those on the far right, they have to come to grips that has to be fixed. Somehow a balance has to be reached, because when you have such a large amount of people living below the poverty line, and someone comes along like in Peru and literally declares themselves a Marxist, which we know is a failed system. It never works. It can't work. But yet it can resonate so strongly because there's enough people who don't have anything. And that's also obviously assuming that the elections came off fairly without a hitch. But let's just assume that to be the case, because it seems that mantra that the Sao Paulo group or this Marxist group in Peru, it's resonating, and people who believe strongly in capitalism and democracy have to somehow figure out a way to ease that burden, or it's almost like I got nothing to lose. The other system doesn't work for me, so why in the world am I going to keep supporting it? And so it's fascinating. It almost seems like a global phenomena that's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly, David. People would have that way to understand the situation and how to vote in the next elections. But here, yes, the traditional political parties are trying to change, put some social stuff and helping and creating new jobs. The current government just have created free education for many people, to have them the opportunity not only to study, but also to have places to work. So that strategy was pushed by all the protests, and that's sad, because that had to be the way to do it, not before, But other thing important here, David just talked, is about the narcotics in Colombia.
Yeah,
because many people would think that the narcotics would do our day here or living, but the impact of narcotics and drug trafficking in Colombia economy represent, in the first place, a benefit for the illegal groups, because this way they have how to finance weapons and associate with the leftists in their purpose of taking power. And this is how they have links with the government of Venezuela, as I mentioned, other leftist governments in Latin America and in the world. Even it's being said that Russia and China had hands dark hands putting money and trying to move their ways. But in this money and the money laundering through which it seeks to legalize the profits obtained with the illicit business generates a damage of enormous proportions in the economy, in our economy, because it generates inflationary effects and divert people from the legal activities toward these illicit but better paid activities, you know?
Right.
And the position of drug trafficking in Colombia is divided. Some Colombians, me included, consider that drugs should be legalized worldwide. And in this way, we could end up with the main factors of violence in our country. It's not the only factor, but it's one of the most important factors of violence in our country.
Right.
So if we cut that link, we won't have the illegal groups, the way to obtain money to finance the weapons, and we would end up that problem. Now, we still have many problems here to solve, such as inequality, the division of land for work, ending or eliminating corruption, etc. But yeah, I would think that despite many people think the drug traffic is a high, very complex problem for us.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you talked about, one of the causes of the unrest being these guerrillas and the drug traffickers and the Sao Paulo group. Do you think they actually are? Is this a concerted effort? I mean, is this like are all these people like working together in a massive movement? Or do you think it's more of a, I don't know, each group trying to kind of carve out its own little niche and trying to take its piece? Or is this so serious that this thing is all this unrest is all tied together?
No, it is a very well planned strategy built with the Sao Paulo meeting they had many years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And so it is not coincidental. It's a strategy built up just to take the power. And they have found the way to finance through the drug trafficking business, that money is helping them just to do many things.
Yeah. So it really is the fuel behind the fire. Really,
it is indeed. It
is. Yeah. And you mentioned also China and Russia, maybe to a certain extent, as exerting their influence. What's an example? I mean, where do you see that? I mean, it's fast. I know in Venezuela it's happening because obviously everyone who listens to this knows my wife from Venezuela. China is heavy in Venezuela in taking natural resources and offering loans for things, and they're embedding themselves, and they have embedded themselves in Venezuela. How's China kind of showing up in Colombia as far as you know it?
No, I would say that strategically, geographically, if you have one country and you have the neighbor country, which is the head of the continent, what would you think if you were a leader? My God, you would have not only one but two, and then you will keep. And you have Peru already, which is down in the border with Colombia. So that's what strategically we would say. I would say that is a sign. But recently, the Putin, the Russian president, offered his good service just to conciliate the position between Maduro and our president.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that nice of him? What a great guy.
So kind. And then, we have legally business with China. China is building here our subway But that's legal. I would, to answer your question, I would say we presume and we have studied in many think tanks, sessions with serious people, what is happening here, which is not aleatory and one shot situation, but is something that has a chain of events in Latin America.
Yeah. And, I even know the Haitian president who was assassinated. From what I understand, and I don't know this story not highly educated on it, but it seems that this Haitian president that got assassinated, he had rejected an offer from China for their 5G network. And miraculously, after he rejected China, he found himself dead like a month and a half or not that I don't think that's been proven. I think actually the assassins came from Colombia is what I'm reading. But the sad thing is those people were trained in the United States in some of our special forces training. So I'm stunned, I'm disappointed, and I'm shocked that the United States, and I don't care if it's been a Democrat or a Republican president, pays so little attention to what's going on in South America. And, here we have this tiny little island, Cuba, that's 60 miles from Florida. And it's one of the strongest communist nations because it's propped up everywhere from every communist nation. And I mean, they are within 100 miles of our border. And now we see Venezuela, we see Peru, we see Bolivia. Even Mexico's got a very hardcore left-leaning president, and now Colombia is coming up for their next president next year. It's almost mind-boggling to me how we just turn the other side to our neighbors to the south so easily. What's the perception? Be honest. What do people think of Americans' thoughts towards South America when you think of just the average American and what they think of South America? What do you think we think about you guys down there? Like we don't give a crap, or we only care about it if we can blow up stuff during the drug war? What's the perception in general?
Well, the perception is that you have a big country and you have a big economy and you have your own business there, and you put your hands in other different countries, probably Southwest, but not here in Latin America. It's not that important. I would say probably having Venezuela with that influence from communism and China and Russia, probably we have a little more attention here. But the deal here, David, is that we are providing the illicit drug, and we are getting a huge consumption from there mainly, not only, but mainly. And that's hurting very, very bad our situation, not only the economy, but the social part, But yeah, we think the support from the States when Trump was president was, I would say, normal. And now that we have Biden in the presidency, we thought that he's more socialist and probably have the tendency to be with the leftists. Mm-hmm. But we haven't seen very much intervention now.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting what he does. Who knows? I don't think he's going to do much of nothing. He hasn't done a whole lot of stuff yet, but I mean, we'll have to wait to see. But you mentioned the drug problem, and you even said to legalize drugs. Is that kind of would that be more of a consensus opinion? Because it's interesting, because in the US, we're starting to see that move a lot. Now, not on the hardcore narcotics like cocaine or methamphetamine, but I'm sure you've probably seen marijuana legalization has become, more and more common here. First, it was just for medicinal purposes. Now it's turning into leisure, and who knows what drug might come next. But so you think that if drugs were legalized, say in the U.S., that would have a positive impact in Latin America?
This is a big old debate here.
Yes, it is. Huge.
many important and smart people had said no. Many
Right.
smart and influential people had said yes. But there could be a myth to say yes now, because you can be so as a promoter of something illegal. But as it has been compared in the past, the alcohol was the history that we passed was forbidden, and then
Right.
was legalized, and what happened? Nothing. So
Right.
yeah, I would say that would liberate the main problem we have. It is not the only problem, but it's the main problem we have. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ricardo, before we move on to just kind of where the future of Colombia and where you see Latin America, even in general, as we see all this stuff going on down there, what if you could just explain to someone what it's, because in America, we've had riots. We had a lot of riots last summer, but I don't think we can fully appreciate what it's like to go through unrest when you see some of the things that have happened in Colombia, or definitely Venezuela, or even going on right now in Cuba. So can you talk a little bit about just what happens to life in general? I mean, you're on the ground down there in Colombia, and I understand you had mentioned you just saw some riots literally just a day or two ago down there. So just kind of give people a little story or a little understanding what that's actually like when things like that are going on.
Yeah, well, our city is the capital here, and we have main cities such as Cali and Medellin and Barranquilla. But the thing is, this even though I'm in Bogota, I'm in one part of the city, and it's a residential part, and we don't have that in our faces here. No, we don't have it.
Right.
But it's mainly in one sides of the city, but you have to stay in your home. You cannot move. You cannot go to your office, for instance, because something could happen, and it starts protests during the day, but when the night comes, the violence just start.
Yeah.
They start just destroying the transportations, the bus transportations, and the facilities for the transportation. They take the monuments and they vandalize the monuments, and they attack the police.
Yeah.
So that creates in you an instability situation, and you start thinking, is this my country the right place to stay with my family, to keep raising my kids, or not? And you start evaluating if you can move to other different country, and if you have money, probably you start thinking if you can invest that money not here but in other different countries. So it is an instability, emotional situation.
Right. Oh, it's hard to fathom being just locked. You can't go out of your house because you're afraid that something might flare up, or can't go to work because of that situation. I mean, it's hard for us to fully appreciate. And again, we had riots, and there's areas where obviously when these riots were going on, you needed to stay clear of. But I don't think it's the scope of these riots that we see in other places are nothing like what we see here in the U.S. As terrible as the riots were here, I don't think we can fully appreciate that of what goes on in some of these places.
Yeah, but David, something to add is what's the logical here? If you have riots and you have violence, so the police should put order, because that's the main task of the police and the forces. But the civil rights and the human rights and the theory that they can block a street, they can block a main street, and you cannot go through. And where are the rights for the rest of the people who are trying to make the living and go to work? So that confrontation between, you can protest, that's one story. But if you block, and not only block, but start the violence, they don't have the right to do it, but you have the international entities just saying that the police is violating their rights and attacking them. But what we don't see is who started the violence, so that we have that problem as well here, that discussion, but that's what we have.
Yeah, that was the same thing we went through last summer after the George Floyd incident, is where does a protest, which is a First Amendment right, the right to free speech and to voice yourself and you're being upset with things that are going on, versus the riot where literally you're going into poorer neighborhoods and you're burning down the very businesses of the people who live in there and you're destroying their livelihood. And then so it's no longer a protest of expressing free speech, and then you fall into the violence end, and even there's division on what is and what is not considered a riot versus a protest now. And I mean, the news media doesn't help any of that at all either, because the far left papers and cable news has one version of it, and the far right has a completely different version of what's a protest versus what's a riot, and you just continue that division. So
yeah. we have one senator from the States, obviously Democrat. I don't have his name right here, but I heard what he said in the news, in the radio. Mm-hmm. I was driving from the gym to my house, and he was saying that he won't allow the government of the United States or the Congress to approve the help, the money aid for the police and the militaries, and that would stop until we fulfill with the human rights. And we have one visit from that human rights entity, international entity, and they obviously the report they delivered was that the police and the army were violating the right of the people, and so on and so forth. So right. That governed, that senator was saying that. So yeah, the states intervene with the money they send here to help us just to eradicate, because we are in that circle, vicious circle that we have. We must eradicate the seeds. But where the problem would end up, when the consumption is controlled and the consumption won't finalize. So yeah, it's a huge debate and huge problem.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we still are going through this, but it started after the George Floyd thing, the defund the police. The way to end racism would be to get rid of police officers, because police officers are racist. And it sounds very similar what that senator is saying. And so this messaging, it is not unique just to Colombia. It's here. I think almost every Western democracy is trying to come to grips with an ideology that seems to lack objective truth. Because, it's hard to fathom a world upon which there's no police. And if the police are gone, everybody's going to behave, and nobody's going to steal stuff, and nobody's going to kill each other, and nobody's going to do any. It's hard. Sometimes it appears your dialogue is almost identical to our dialogue. Like, how do you have a rational debate on a topic like that you shouldn't have police, or you need to take away their money, or you need to take over? It's like, that would mean that we can now assume everybody is going to be honest and love each other every day of the week. It'd be nice if that was true, but that doesn't seem to be ever the reality in any civilization in human history. So yeah, that's fascinating. So
yeah.
But Ricardo, so tell me then, all this stuff going on there in Colombia, what do you see as the future of Colombia, and even expand that? I mean, in Latin America, and obviously you don't have a crystal ball, you're not a political scientist, you're not a theorist, but if we just flash forward to the future, maybe give us an initial thought on what you think is going to happen in Colombia with the election next year, but think maybe 5-10 years, what's Latin America and Colombia going to look like in general?
David, let me start with the next presidential elections. If the left wing, the left party want, if they don't get the presidency, they will not allow the president in place to govern. They won't allow
Wow.
that. So the riots and the protests would continue.
Yeah.
If the presidency is the leftists get the presidency, I think we will start the same path as Chavez in Venezuela 20 years ago. So we won't have the way to live here from now to 3 years, 4 years. We have to emigrate.
Wow.
Because, and that would be Colombia. We have Peru, as I mentioned before, that the president, the Marxist president, is going to take the seat in 1 week or so.
Right.
So we will be that with Peru and Venezuela, as you know it. In Venezuela, the guerrilla is sitting there, growing, and having the traffic path. Not only that they have all the path to transport the illicit business.
Right.
So we will have Venezuela, Peru, and probably Chile will have the same problem. Now you mentioned Mexico, Labrador, the president in Mexico.
You're right.
So what I think is what we will have here is the continent of the left parties in the government. If, as I mentioned, if they get the presidency here in Colombia.
Wow. You think it's that big for the rest of the continent that it's time to make a stand, or this movement's going to pretty much sweep the whole thing, huh?
You have in Brazil, Bolsonaro, who's from the right party, and he will finalize his presidency probably in 3 years. Right. But what I think is that the possibility that the leftists get the government, as they had it in Brazil for 10 years with Lula da Silva and another lady who was in the presidency, and the same for Ecuador. In Ecuador, currently they have a president from the right political party, but he just started, but he will finalize in 4 years. Mm-hmm. So the possibility for them to keep the government, it is not high. I don't think so.
Right. So in Colombia on the far left, do you know who's running yet? Or are you still going like through the primaries where the left is trying to choose who's going to be the one to go in the general election? Or do you already know who the person is that the right's going to have to run against in this election?
No, we already know. In the left is one guy, Petro is his last name. Uh-huh. He was from the guerrilla.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Chavez type situation.
Yeah.
Chavez from the military. Yeah.
He has the same ideas, and he said that as soon as he gets the presidency, he will call to a referendum with one question, yes or no. Do you, Colombian citizens, want to change the constitution? And if the answer is yes, which is highly possible, again, we will have the change of the constitution in which they put the presidency forever. They won't get... And what they are saying is, no, we will leave the presidency after 4 years, as Chavez mentioned when he started. He said when he started there in Venezuela, of course, I will leave the presidency as soon as the period is finalized, and that was not true.
Well, first of all, that question is about as brain dead, ignorant, lacking any intellectual understanding. Do you want to change the Constitution? Yes or no? I mean, the Constitution, I'm sure, and just like our Constitution, has tons of articles, and some are good and some are bad and some are in the middle. But just to pose one question, to sweepingly change everything is about lacking complete intellectual understanding of anything, but is this guy kind of like a Chavez figure, like a really fiery, speaker, change the world type thing? Is that kind of the personality that does he throw out kind of a Donald Trump style mentality, but on the far left side rhetoric, or is he kind of a quiet guy?
This guy is intelligent, he's smart, but you know what is coming behind him, and what he's promoting, which is putting our economy. Even he said that what we should do here in Colombia to get our financial situation better was to print money, and to print money, and to print money, and to print money. So it is those kind of ideas that where are leading a country, which is the bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, that seems like what we're doing right now. We seem to be printing a whole lot of money, and we don't seem to be stopping it either. And but that's a recipe for disaster for sure. But anyway, well, it's a scary thing, and I think everybody listening, we need to pay attention to what's going on in South America and Colombia, because this is no joke. I mean, we're literally witnessing, in many cases in South America, the annihilation of Western civilization, like a democratic system like we've known it. And we're returning, it seems, in so many places towards that socialist model that has never worked anywhere ever. And, there's a whole lot of faults in a Western style democracy. And there's a whole lot of corruption, and there's a whole lot of inequality, but still, seeing how rapid countries seem to be falling right south of our border here is pretty stunning to witness. So I thank you so much, Ricardo. Is there anything else that you want to say as we wrap up here, or have we pretty much covered all the bases? If anybody wants to follow you, anything like that?
David, no, thank you very much. Everything covered.
Awesome.
One advice for you in your next ideas for podcast, to try to get opinions about the legalization of the drug. It's a very important issue.
Yeah, we didn't touch. We probably could have stayed right there, like the entire podcast, because that's a big. It's controversial, but we know the way we've been doing it isn't working. It hasn't been working, and I mean, how many decades has, I remember all the way back to the first George Bush and the war on drugs. And I mean, we've been doing the same thing over and over. But then you look at the other extreme and open up like all the drugs to legalization. That's a whole nother, but you're right. That is but it's interesting to hear a South American perspective on that, hey, this may not be, this may be the route to go, because I mean, you guys probably feel, and especially Colombia, the murder, the corruption, of all these illicit drugs. I mean, like you said, it is literally impacting everything.
And David, probably, it is only an academical thought, because in the reality, the convenient for the people who's earning money from that, even governments, it is more productive to have it as is.
Yeah. That's sad. That's really
We're
sad.
Condemned.
That is
We're
so
condemned.
sad. Yeah. So on that happy note, Ricardo, I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up. But it's been so good talking to you. I know you bring a great perspective, and again, thanks for coming on the show and talking about Latin America and Colombia with us. So
thank you.
With that, have yourself a great day, and everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I so hope you found value in the topic today. Every single day, if we can expand our perspective just a little bit on any range of topic, whether it be about our physical body, intellectual sharpness and perspective,
or spiritual growth, then if we stay consistent in the long run, we all become more well-rounded people able to cope with all manner of events in life. I always appreciate you clicking like or follow to this podcast. Generally, a new episode is published every single week. And please, if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about them. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week until we talk again.